CNN is reporting that Ken Chesebro has leaked some recordings, or somebody has leaked recordings of him cooperating with Michigan investigators, as well as tons of emails that he had regarding the fake elector scheme in Michigan and Wisconsin. And essentially, they're recordings of his interviews with investigators and hundreds of emails that he turned over, revealing this last-minute scramble. It was on the eve of January 6th to get fake elector certificates to Washington, D.C. They were so desperate to get these fake electors there that they were willing to charter a private plane if they had to. They didn't end up having to, but they were willing to do it just to get them there after they found out that they were stuck in the mail somewhere and weren't going to get to Mike Pence on time. And this is really interesting because it shows the lengths that people were going through to get these fake electors to Congress so that they could get Mike Pence to accept them and not certify the election for Joe Biden. Of course, Mike Pence rejected that. But what does this mean? And a lot is being made of these emails and these recordings, but I want to give a perspective from a former prosecutor, as I am a former prosecutor. First of all, what I found interesting about this is that apparently Ken Chesebro reached out to Jack Smith and his team and offered to cooperate with him, but he hasn't heard back from him. And why is that? Why would Jack Smith not want to speak to Ken Chesebro about this? And I think it's somewhat interesting, right? So let's look at what's going on with Ken Chesebro and why Jack Smith wouldn't want him as a cooperator. First of all, he's one of the unindicted conspirators in Jack Smith's indictment against Donald Trump. It's a 4-count, one-defendant indictment involving the January 6th efforts to steal the election in front of Judge Tanya Chutkan. And so one reason could be that maybe he's going to be indicted. Maybe there will be a subsequent indictment. But that's one theory. I have no inside information about that, but that could be one. But another reason, I think, is let's look at Ken Chesebro. So if you look at what he was charged with in Georgia, which is very similar, he pled guilty at the 11th hour to 1 count and was kept out of jail. He had to pay a fine, pled to a felony, and he had to write a letter of apology. And we recently saw his letter of apology. It is the most unapology letter I've ever seen. Okay, I think it should be rejected. I think it's actually not responsive to the conditions of his sentence. But it says, "I apologize to the citizens of the state of Georgia and of Fulton County for my involvement in count 15 of the indictment." That's it. He's not saying, "I apologize, I did something wrong. I apologize for trying to steal an election. I apologize for misleading the American people. I apologize." No, it's basically, what he's saying is, "I apologize for getting caught." Right? And that's it. That's all he's apologizing for. And the other thing that's coming out with this information about these emails and these recordings is he feels thrown under the bus, right? He feels that the Trump campaign and Trump campaign lawyers are throwing him under the bus and then making it seem like it was just him and Giuliani. And so he's kind of disgruntled. Again, not taking ownership. He's basically saying, "Hey, you're throwing me under the bus, so I'm going to throw you under the bus. It's not like we were doing it alone." I mean, but it's all about what he's not saying. He's not saying, "We all did something wrong. I knew we did something wrong at the time. I'm so sorry that I did this." Or, he's not saying any of the things that you would need him to say to make him to be a good witness. I also went back and re-listened to his allocution, which is where he recites facts when he pleads guilty, because he had to plead guilty in Georgia, and at least in New York, when someone pleads guilty, you have to admit what you did. You have to say facts, or you at least have to have the facts read to you, and then you say, "Yes, I did do those things." Right? It's what we used to call it as a factual allocution. There's a legal part and a factual part, and the legal part is I admit to committing these crimes, and the factual part is by doing that I did these acts, or I admit to doing these acts. And if you can't admit to it, a judge would reject your plea of guilty, because you have to, in fact, be guilty to plead guilty. And so I went back to listen to it to see because I remembered that there was a long factual recitation by the prosecutor. But when you go back and you listen to it, all that was it was quite a long recitation of facts by the prosecutor, but he never said that's what he did. It's just what the prosecutor said they were prepared to prove. This was, again, so this plea of guilty was very thin in terms of he said no facts. He pled guilty to the statute, and his letter of apology says nothing. Now, these recordings that came out today are after the fact recordings of Ken Chesebro speaking to investigators currently, right? These are investigators in Michigan who he is cooperating with in the fake elector scheme in Michigan. So I think 12 or so fake electors are being prosecuted in Michigan, and he's cooperating against those individuals. But that is hearsay, those recordings. It's not statements during the commission of the crime. Like if somebody was recording them doing it at the time, then that could come in because that's part of the crime. But these are out-of-court statements being offered for the truth. They're just recordings after the fact talking to investigators. So they aren't evidence. The emails are, because they were simultaneous emails happening at the time, and it's co-conspirator statements to one another, among other reasons why they'd be admissible. But again, in these recordings, at least what I've heard so far, now, of course, they all haven't been released. I still haven't heard what we would need to hear in order to make him a valuable witness to Jack Smith. Because right now he's talking about himself. He's talking about what he did and what other lawyers and other people did to get the electors there. But what would be valuable to Jack Smith would be if he came out and said, we knew that Joe Biden won the election, but I was working to provide a legal theory, right? It was, as one judge said, it was a coup in search of a legal theory, that I was looking for a way to shoehorn a bogus legal theory to try and convince people that they should go along with this criminal conspiracy to steal the election, right, from Joe Biden. And I participated in it by giving it some fake color of law. And that was what I did. And short of that, he is not a valuable witness to Jack Smith. Because if he's going to just all he does is throw other people under the bus and not take his own responsibility. He's the architect of this scheme. He is essential and critical. And for him to be valuable, because credibility matters, right? For him to be credible and a credible witness at trial, and for Jack Smith, he'd have to admit to his part in it. And his part has to be criminal. It can't just be, more of the BS. Well, I thought this was what the law was, because then all he's doing is feeding into Trump's defense, his phony defense that he was just following the advice of counsel, which could be a defense. So I have not heard anything, even with this new revelation, that makes him valuable to Jack Smith yet. He might be able to get there eventually. I mean, he is cooperating with states and other people, but until he owns up to what he did and what Donald Trump did and what Donald Trump knew and what they all knew, because they were all co-conspirators working together to steal this election and stop the certification of the election, then he's just another desperate, disgruntled defendant who's pissed off that he got caught and doesn't like being thrown under the bus. And so he's turning around and throwing other people under the bus. But like I said, his bogus apology letter, his non-plea allocution, and his after the fact pissed off at everybody because he threw them under the bus. We'll see. We'll see if it gets him there. But these emails are pretty good. If Jack Smith can get some other people surrounding this, I think that could be pretty powerful. I'm not sure Ken Chesebro is the guy that you want, but you want other people who are on these emails to talk about the desperate measures they went to in order to prove that they were trying to subvert the election with these fake electors, right? And the extreme lengths that they would go to in order to do it. So that's what's coming out today. And stay tuned and let's see what else is going to happen with Ken Chesebro and to see if he actually becomes a cooperator for Jack Smith. The jury's still out on that. So I'm Karen Friedman Agnifilo with Legal AF. Join me and my co-hosts every Wednesday and Saturday, and you'll get the latest news on the intersection between law and politics.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.